speaking of American pessimism.
Yeah, what's your point today?
It's exactly that. It's about American pessimism. And this is basically Ryan and I are going to be doing something a little less scripted as we go forward with the monologues, maybe on a weekly basis. Maybe sometimes we'll write it all out, but just so that we can kind of talk through some of these issues in a more free-flowing way. I want to talk about David Brooks's recent essay in The Atlantic, in which he's basically saying, if Americans feel pessimistic, they're wrong. This pessimism that has descended upon the American population is unwarranted. And he gives a few reasons for that. First, he says it's ahistorical. He says, quote, the first problem with all this pessimism is that it's ahistorical. Every era in American history has faced its own massive challenges. And in every era, the air has been thick with gloomy jeremiads, warning of catastrophe and decline. Pick any decade in the history of this country and you will find roiling turmoil. But in all those same decades, you will also find, alongside the chaos and prophecies of doom, energetic dynamism and leaping progress. Of course, this is true, that you always find these things alongside each other in the United States of America. He then goes on to cite a Gallup poll where 17% of Americans said that America was on the right track in today versus 69% in 2000. Think about that. Personal satisfaction, in the meantime, David Brooks points out, your satisfaction with your personal life, that stayed pretty stable in the mid-80s. About 85% of people say that they're personally satisfied with their own life. So where satisfaction with the direction of the country plummets from 69 to 17%, you have people remaining relatively satisfied with their own lives. Well, here's an important counterpoint to that, no pun intended. Arthur Brooks has written about the General Social Survey. He's also written about this in The Atlantic. He calls this one of the greatest paradoxes of our time. All of the statistics that David Brooks rolls out on these reasons for American optimism and dynamism, et cetera, many of them are correct. Not all of them are correct. Many of them are correct. But Arthur Brooks points out that one of the biggest paradoxes is that as our material comforts have increased, our happiness has decreased. And a great source to look for this is at the General Social Survey, which has been tracking American happiness for a very long time. And Brooks points out that a long-term gradual decline in happiness, so this rise in unhappiness, both a decline in happiness and a rise in unhappiness, you can find in the General Social Survey from 1988 to the present. So why on earth would that be happening alongside all of these trends and rising material happinesses? And I think that's really where David Brooks is missing the point. He's saying that this is distorting reality. This is the second point that he makes, that the pessimism is unwarranted because things aren't all that bad. Well, first, of course, on the ahistorical point, maybe people are pessimistic because they're less happy. Maybe they have all of these material comforts and they're not making people happy. Therefore, their pessimism is warranted. Now, is it a distortion? Things are actually okay? This is what he says. The second problem with the decline narrative is that it distorts reality. He goes on to say, you know, I'm no Pollyanna. I basically think, though, that America today is objectively better than it was before, but subjectively worse. Objectively better, but subjectively worse. So this isn't the fault of the system. It's your fault for blaming the system when everything is good. He says, we have much higher standards of living and many conveniences, but when it comes to how we relate to one another, whether in the realm of politics, across social divides, or in the intimacies of family and community life, distrust is rife, bonds are fraying, and judgments are harsh, but that doesn't mean the future isn't going to be brighter than the present or that America is in decline. The pessimists miss an underlying truth. The society can get a lot wrong as long as it gets the big thing right. And that big thing is this, is if a society is good at unlocking creativity, at nurturing the abilities of its people, then its ills can be surmounted. He talks about how it's so much easier to get water now than it was when you had to go, you just get it out of the tap now as opposed to getting it out of the well. Productivity is up. The price and quality of education compared to others in the world is up. Long-term longevity trends are good, which I don't think is necessarily true. We have innovation infrastructure. We have small businesses booming. We have carbon emissions down, economic expansion, cheaper goods, and a small surge in manufacturing. This is ridiculous because he's cherry picking statistics that distort reality, right? Like you can cherry pick statistics that show decline or an increase or the fortunes of America sort of increasing, but that's really not what's happening because I think the better statistics to look at is you have a reversal of life expectancy at birth and mortality about 25 years in the past. We're like basically around the mid to late 90s on both of those measures. That has not happened. You saw a dip in that when you had the after World War I and with the flu epidemic, the flu pandemic in the late 1910s and around 1920. That did happen then. It didn't last that long. It started to tick back upwards. But what we're seeing right now is a huge drop. And it is not distorting reality to be pessimistic about that. It's not distorting reality to look at happiness dipping. It's not distorting reality to say adult and childhood obesity rates have doubled in 30 years. How much of our health and happiness is connected to that? Things like heart disease, things like cancer, all of those things are directly, in many ways, connected to those surging rates. We're talking about doubling in just 30 years. We're talking about rising loneliness, rising addiction on some counts, failing rates in marriage, births, religiosity. All of those things are associated in the United States with happiness. So it makes sense that as those have declined, happiness has declined. And David Brooks says, you're distorting reality. The system is fine. It's you the problem is with. So he thinks it's top down, that it's not bottom up. And this is also just totally conflating two different arguments, right? That reality can be trending bad. But you can still have reason for optimism, and he's saying those things are mutually exclusive. But those are different arguments, right? Things can be bad, and you can still have reason for optimism. As I think we have probably more reason for optimism in this country than in many other countries, because we do still at present have the freedoms, I think, to correct the system. But because we have the freedoms to correct the system, doesn't mean the system isn't broken, and it doesn't mean the system hasn't failed, and that people are right to be pessimistic about that. And that's what he totally misses. And this is the elite myopia, right? That if you're experiencing hyper...
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now. And Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us. And if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.